Hey, what's up everybody? We've got another episode of the One Piece vlog, and in this video I really want to discuss what might be my favorite moment so far in One Piece, specifically the fight between Usopp and Luffy. So on the last episode of this series, I read through the Skypiea arc, and I talked about how I thought it was maybe the most underrated arc in the series, and at least one of my top 3 favorites up until that point, reading into the manga. And so now we're on to the Water 7 arc, and so I just really wanted to talk about, there's a little filler arc, I can't remember what the name of that arc is, where they're on the Long Island, I think, or that's what I'll call it in this video. And so that's this little filler arc that is like, I think 1 volume, just a handful of chapters, dozen chapters or so, and then kind of the beginning of the Water 7 arc, and how this little filler arc, even when I first was reading it, I wasn't the biggest fan of it, but I think it does a few important things to set up for the beginning of the Water 7 arc. So I'm going to talk about that in this episode, and then the next episode after this will be kind of a full conversation about the entirety of the Water 7 arc, and then probably breaking down a few other pieces of it. And so obviously the moment that I'm talking about is when the merry-go they have to get rid of it. It's no good anymore. And Usopp goes on this whole thing where puts his life on the line, is literally willing to sacrifice anything to get the stolen 200 million berries from the Frankie family. And he gets just beat up, and he literally will try anything to save that, to hopefully save the merry-go. And of course, as we all know, that it's far past repair, and so that leads into the moment where Usopp can't accept that the merry-go is that they're going to get rid of the merry-go, and so he challenges Luffy to a fight. And I knew this moment was going to happen. I had seen videos of it, clips of it, but I, for some reason, always thought it was going to be like at the time skip or something, or at least maybe before the war arc that's going to come eventually. I had no idea it was going to happen this soon. And so when they showed up and they got an appraisal of it, I was like, oh, they're just going to fix it up and it's going to be fixed for a while, and then like everything's going to be good to go. Well, I'm going to get a few more arcs with the merry-go, and then they just slap me right in the face and the merry-go is done for. And really what sets up this emotional thread, because obviously when you have 2 best friends fighting, that's going to lead to a lot of emotions and a lot of potential really great drama. But the little arc before it does a pretty good job, not only at setting up the entirety of the Water 7 arc, and also a few things with Robin that I'll talk about a little bit, but definitely Usopp and Luffy, and it's pretty minor what it does, but I think it's super impactful. So we get this little filler arc with Luffy. They get to the Long Island, they find the weird guy who's on his stilts for 10 years, which is just another example of the crazy, awesome world building of One Piece. Like, who would ever think of a guy getting stuck up on stilts for 10 years? And again, the humor plays into the humor. And so we get this other rival pirate crew that comes up and kind of tricks Luffy into playing this game where there's 3 challenges. Certain crew members compete in the challenges. One's a race on a raft. The other is like throwing a person who's a ball into kind of like this little hoop on the ground, and then a one-on-one match. And they're all kind of just, I was not a big fan of, really, I couldn't tell you anybody that was a villain right there, and I don't think that was the purpose of it. Coming off of the high of Skypiea, I definitely wanted, like, I was ready to keep going, and one of the issues that does come along when you have a story that is this long is you're going to run into smaller arcs that do a little bit of world building, and it's always fun to hang out with the crew. But at some point when you're when I was in the middle of reading these challenges, I was like, let's just get on with it. Like, I want to get to the other big villains. I want to see more Whitebeard or Blackbeard or Ace, all of these characters, Hawkeye, Mihawk. It's like, I'd much rather see all of these big players that are just constantly being hinted at. But right now I'm taking, a 12, 15 chapter detour on just these random guys that I don't really care about. And so that was definitely my thought process at reading it, especially when the storytelling, like I talked about, got so well at the end of the Skypiea arc, and thematically it was so engaging on how it views progress in life and history. And so then I was just kind of getting through that arc quickly. But there's a little moment that I think could easily go overlooked, but it's a testament to the ability of Oda and how important little moments like this can be to build up bigger dramatic moments like we see with when the Marigo leaves. And that is when Luffy, who is doing the one-on-one fighting, he has to ask for a coach, basically, for his like wrestling coach, and Luffy's like wearing his afro, and it's like all humorous, and it just kind of seems like a gag bit because Usopp is the one that he chooses, and Usopp is like, you've got to wear this afro, and it's really funny in the moment, and there's like a few throwaway lines where the crew basically talks about like, why would he pick Usopp? And it just shows you the friendship that those two characters have. It just makes me think back to all of these moments with Luffy and Usopp and just their incredible relationship with each other. But then which also goes into making it so much more heartbreaking when this happens not that long after that moment where Luffy kind of throwaway just picks Usopp to be his guy. And that really, I think, little moments like that are just peppered throughout all of One Piece constantly. And then it really pays off when Usopp and Luffy are at odds with one another. And that situation is so believable at the same time because you just know the emotion of being attached to something and then not feeling like you have a fair chance to express your voice in a group of people that you're the closest with. And obviously, this has been talked about at length, and it's just another level to Usopp's character. And it's just showing that, without the merry-go, without the guy who repaired it constantly, are they going to need Usopp? Nami is invaluable. Chopper is invaluable, even though they're both not the strongest outright fighters. And so Usopp is kind of in this weird place where they're going to get a guy who can fix the ship up even better than he could. And so since the merry-go is leaving, why not have him leave? What is his purpose? And just makes it so heart-wrenching. It's one of the most emotional moments in a series, and it obviously feels a lot like, to me, the moment where Luffy puts his hat on Nami. And it shows you the extreme that they can go to, and that fight also shows, though, and what's exciting about it is Usopp doesn't really give himself enough credit for the talent that he is at fighting. He is incredibly smart. He's making all these awesome weapons all the time. And so I definitely am looking forward to, this is really the start of him growing into a competent fighter within the group. And it just shows that no one in the crew thinks that way. And there's a lot of moments even with Sanji, who he doesn't hang out with Usopp. He doesn't talk to Usopp nearly as much as Chopper and Luffy do. Chopper and Luffy and Usopp are always, it's kind of those three. They're very similar in their quirkiness. But seeing Sanji get so lash out against Luffy saying, we want to keep Usopp, it just shows you the camaraderie that everyone has. And in a similar way that Shonen is always about friendship, it's another great example of the kind of bonds people can put together and people have, and how absolutely brutal it can be when those bonds are severed, just like Naruto and Sasuke talk about all the time. But in this case, Luffy and Usopp really feel like they're the best of friends, and I think it's shown right in that little arc when it's a throwaway line, but the person that Luffy picks isn't Zoro, isn't Sanji, isn't Nami, but it's Usopp. And it just goes a long way to making that moment one of the most emotional, if not the most emotional so far in the series. And another little moment about that filler arc that I really liked is right after it, it just absolutely flips everything on its head when it introduces the Admiral, and I'm blanking on his name, but when the Admiral just shows up, he has ice powers, and he just absolutely destroys the crew, and really hints to the mystery that Robin is, because we still don't know so much about Robin. And it's this really conflicting idea when Luffy, and it builds off of what I talked about in Skypiea and about history, is that Robin is always looking back at history, but we know so little about her history. And Luffy just flat out states, I don't care what happened in her past. She's with us now. And so that really builds to her disappearance in the Water 7 arc, and right when Usopp is fighting. And I think it also works well because Robin obviously she's been with the crew the least, and we know kind of the least about her at this point, and she definitely still feels a little bit more disconnected, even though still incredibly close. And it really shows the duality of her character, where sometimes it hints that she's just the devil, like she's a demon, and then sometimes she's talking about how cute Luffy's afro looks, and so Robin is continually building to be one of my favorite characters. I cannot wait to find out more about her in the rest of this Water 7 arc. And so I guess I can just talk about a few initial thoughts to the Water 7 arc. Obviously, this first beginning of it with Usopp, I think, does a great job at whatever villain rises out of this arc to weave in Robin and Usopp officially really like feeling like they're both true members of this crew, even though all the other members think they are. You know, there is that internal conflict of thinking that you might not be as good as the your other peers, and so I think that's going to be a big theme going forward in this arc. I love the world building of Water 7. I am just like a sucker for like a city built on canals, and so I'm super excited to see more of this city, more of how it's built. I do know, I have seen images of Frankie, and that he does become the shipwright, so it's going to be interesting to see how that comes about throughout this arc. So obviously, I've heard a lot of people say a lot of great things about the Water 7 arc, and the one thing that this arc has that the other two kind of bigger arcs really haven't, the Alabasta and the Skypiea arc before it, is that Alabasta also took a little bit to get going, and Skypiea obviously took a little bit and then really hit hard. But right here, it's giving us one of the best moments in the series at the beginning of the arc, so I can't even imagine what's going to happen now that Usopp and Robin are separated from the crew. So I'm really excited to see the structure of the fights, how the villains kind of turn out. Frankie, I'm so excited to learn more about him. I've seen just a little bit of what's going on with him, and so those are kind of my thoughts on. I didn't want to break down too much the fight like individually between Usopp and Luffy, because I know there's just a ton of videos on it, but I really do think that the weaknesses of this long story that One Piece is, like, well, I'm a third of the way through where the story is right now, is in that little filler arc. You can just kind of want to get ahead of yourself a little bit, but there's also a lot of value in that and building to the characters, like we see with just a really tiny thing with that relationship between Luffy and Usopp, but makes it that much more heartbreaking when they actually fight. And obviously those series of panels are just absolutely incredible, and I read it a couple days ago, and just it's like burnt into my brain the image of Luffy crying and Usopp crying. It's heartbreaking, but I can't wait till hopefully Usopp returns to the crew, and they can kind of have their moment. And I'm excited for Usopp to really try to live up to the potential of a fighter that he is, because he's a lot smarter than sometimes I feel he gives himself credit for, and his will to fight is just incredible when you saw him fighting the Frankie family for that 200 million berries, even though he was clearly outclassed right there. So I'm really excited to see. I think the arc is building in really unique way. I don't think a One Piece arc has never started off, at least for me, with this much of a punch in the beginning. Normally it's a little bit of a slow burn, and so it's going to be really interesting to see how this arc finishes out. And so my plan for the next couple episodes of the One Piece vlog, I might make a more vlog type video where I'm not in my studio here, but I'm actually, out and about, more of a vlog type, kind of just talking about my day. If you're interested in that, let me know. And then I also am thinking about getting some people on for more of a podcast style, just kind of overall thoughts about Water 7 to kind of go along with the bigger arcs, and that kind of might be my formula moving forward. If you have any ideas, if you want to see anything with these One Piece vlogs, I'm really just open to, still just talking to the camera about my thoughts, whether it's about a character, a moment like the fight between Usopp and Luffy and the build up to that with the little arc, or kind of talking about other parts of the manga. I could do more of a breakdown, panel per panel, page per page. And then also, I just want to get more people in who like One Piece, get talking about their thoughts when they read it for the first time, like me. So again, if you have any ideas for anyone that you might want to see come on here, or if you're a creator and you want to come talk some One Piece, just DM me. Twitter @artessays is the best way to reach me, and you should follow me anyways, and we can always talk some One Piece and other anime. I'm having a blast reading One Piece. Taking a little bit of a break from this super long story has been kind of nice. It's really rejuvenated my passion for reading this story, and I'm now that I'm in complete new territory, it's just it's so exciting to read. So I hope you guys liked this video. Of course, I'm still on the path to trying to get monetized before the end of the year. So I hope you liked the video, and I hope to see you in the next one.